Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to help Dan Cain through his loneliness with Bride of Reanimator. Let's get to it. We open deep in the jungles of Peru, where we find West and Cain enlisted in the service of a guerrilla army, doing field surgery. This is right up their alley as it allows for some sloppy technique, and they have plenty of secondary use for the unfortunate soldiers. Dan wants to leave as things get lively on the battlefield. Aw, Dan, but there's so much test fodder and iguanas. But the Mortars make this decision for them, and they're forced to fight their way out, solidifying their loyalties. We're somehow back at Miskatonic Hospital, where Dan and Herbert are treating a patient. For some reason. Who has sick?
My head is about the only part of me that's not sick.
Don't say that in front of Herbert. And then Dan takes her off for some unspecified but routine surgery. Despite their return, the events of 8 months ago haven't been totally forgotten. We learn this as Lieutenant Chapham visits Dr. Graves in pathology to present some newly discovered evidence. Hey, that's some fine evidence he got there. Graves gives him the rundown on the mysteriously well-preserved specimen from the massacre, and the mysterious substance Dr. Hill was working on. You know, if only there was some way or someone to investigate all these mysteries.
I was planning on doing that first thing in the morning, as a matter of fact.
Oh, perfect. They also note the curious recent disappearances of random body parts, right as West slides in to make some choice selections and gets his delicate little fingers on Megan's heart. This comes in handy later when Dan decides he wants to do more saving than butchering and plans to move out. So West hooks him back in with Meg's heart and helps him see the end result with a subtle visualization like a veteran salesman. But before he can pull a commitment, the doorbell rings. It's the police, who West regards with the same disdain as all authority figures. He takes a moment to set out his suspicions and then sees himself out. Back at pathology, Dr. Graves actually gets around to doing some work, quickly deducing and confirming the reagent's purpose, somewhat to his detriment. And just think, you could have been doing this for the last 8 months. To make up for lost time, his Phase 2 experiment involves reanimating Dr. Hill's head. He tries to show off his cool new trick, but Hill plays like Michigan J. Frog, causing Graves to almost immediately begin questioning his own sanity. Meanwhile, Dan and Herbert are acquiring fresh materials while everyone watches. Turns out the damn dog belongs to Francesca, their Peruvian friend from Italy. Dan quickly steps up like, "What's up, girl? How you living?" and secures a date for later. That evening, we learn that with West's new reagent, building new creations is as easy as screwing some pieces together and slathering them with the substance. Francesca arrives for their date while Chapham stuffs his face outside, his favorite part of a stakeout. Francesca introduces Dan to her special sauce, a family recipe comprised of ragu and sriracha, and then Dan gives her the sauce upstairs, if you know what I mean. Ooh, wink. Back in the sub-basement, West gets bored, eventually wandering up where Chapham has moved his stakeout to their living room. He's done waiting and investigating like a chump. It's time to push people around and smash shit up. So West chloroforms his way out of the situation, like always. Dan discovers his deeds and starts to freak, but he had no choice, and hear me out, this can be a test of the heart injection technique they had planned for Meg. It works, but Chapham trashes their tailgating cooler and things get sloppy again. He locks them in and runs off, but doesn't leave before thrashing Francesca's dog, which she brought on her first date. The boys break out and Dan comforts Francesca while West makes off with the remains and starts getting crafty. When Francesca comes calling and her loyal companion gives her a manly "how-do," she runs away in terror. Dan tries to clear his mind and connect with something real, but ends up boring Gloria to death. They go in hard to try to save her, and I come to the realization that we never got confirmation that they actually finished medical school. Afterward, West orders her remains straight to cremation, making off with his bucket. He reveals his prize to Dan, and then sells the hell out of the project by noting the value and sanctity of all the individual parts. After diddling some tendons, Dan's in. We're bringing back Meg. Back with Graves, we see that Hill still has his telepathic abilities, enlisting the help of Chapham and forcing Graves to modify him. On the way out, the lieutenant forces Francesca to nibble his stump, before wreaking havoc on the floor, taking any and all reanimated bodies with him. Back with the boys, they're awaiting the reanimation of Meg when the doorbell rings. West finds a courier has left a major award of some type, and he cracks it open to find Dr. Hill trying to be a zoomer. Please. Downstairs, Meg wakes up and gets a birthday smooch before Dan presents her to West and Francesca. Then, all the other monsters bust in and they have to barricade themselves back downstairs. Dan starts to have the slow realization that their creation is not Meg in any meaningful way, and the girls start to get catty. Unsurprisingly, we find that having someone's heart doesn't make you behave in a particular way. The power of love. The ladies go back and forth as everyone breaks in and starts grabbing throats. However, the monster's offensive suffers from infighting and tissue rejection. Our main group tries to exit through the back, but are greeted by West's freak factory while Dr. Hill flaps around like a maniac. And then there's a miraculous cave-in that entombs all but Dan and Francesca. And that was Bride of Reanimator, the Lovecraftian adaptation of the Frankenstein story, which implies that Dan is West's imperfect creation. How poetic. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.